The tower had no heartbeat, yet anyone who stood too long within its walls could feel the illusion of one. A slow throb, stone settling against stone, iron biting into root, gears whispering somewhere deep in the belly of Orthanc. It was not alive, and yet it waited. High above the plain of Isengard, a single light burned in the highest chamber. A pale glow too steady to be fire, too restless to be moonlight. Saruman sat beside it, hands folded, eyes fixed on the glassy sphere that pulsed with hidden fire. His beard, once white as snow at dawn, now carried the faintest shadow of ash, and his robes whispered like woven smoke. He did not move for hours. The night around him was endless, a sweep of stars wheeling above black mountains, and still he sat, listening. Not to voices that other men might hear, but to the silence between them. In that silence, he found music. In that music, he found command. Far below, the pits of Isengard churned with sound, the hiss of molten iron, the hammer's scream on anvil, the growl of saw-cutting greenwood. The forest that once crowded the tower's feet had thinned to jagged stumps, shadows bent in pain. Where once streams ran clear, black smoke rose in steady pillars. And still the tower breathed. Saruman rose at last, robes flowing, every movement measured as though ceremony itself had taken residence in his bones. He stood at the narrow window slit and gazed outward. Beyond the scorched ring of Isengard lay the wider world, sleeping villages, rivers glimmering faint silver, mountains shouldering the night. "Order," he murmured. His voice was a deep chord, resonant, carrying not passion but gravity. "Order where there is chaos. A hand where there is drift. Will where there is only chance." He was not speaking to the sphere, nor to the shadows crowding the corners of the chamber. He was speaking to himself and, perhaps, to the void that always answered back. The memory came unbidden, long halls of council, warm lights spilling on polished wood. Gandalf's laughter rising, sudden and human, as the Grey Wizard told some trivial tale of hobbits. Saruman remembered that laughter, not with fondness, but with a dull ache he refused to name. What did laughter matter when the world trembled toward ruin? What did smoke curling from a hobbit's pipe matter when empires could collapse with a single unchecked shadow? His hands tightened behind his back. He had outgrown the comfort of small joys. He told himself this often enough that the words became armor. Yet in the silence, the tower exhaled, and it sounded almost like regret. A crow landed on the sill, feathers ragged from flight through ash. It peered in at him, head cocked, eyes glinting. For a moment, wizard and bird stared at one another, two guardians of secrets, both too proud to blink. Then, with a sudden croak, it flung itself back into the void. Saruman turned away. His gaze fell once more upon the sphere. The light within had changed, deeper now, edged with crimson, a flicker of fire seen through smoke. It was not his doing, yet it bent toward his will, like a river turning to a carved channel. He reached out. His fingers hovered an inch above the glass. Heat bled into his skin, though the surface never warmed. In that moment, he was no longer in Orthanc. He stood instead in endless night, a horizon without form, a silence without mercy. Something vast and ancient stirred there, not sight, not sound, but presence. It was not a greeting. It was recognition. Saruman pulled back, breath sharp. The chamber was once again stone, wood, iron. The sphere glowed faintly innocent, as though it had shown him nothing at all. He straightened, smoothing his robes, mastering the tremor that sought his hand. The tower breathed, steady and slow, and Saruman matched his breath to it. He had seen enough. Enough to know the world outside slept too deeply. Enough to know the age of idle laughter was ending. Enough to know that if will and order were to rise, they would rise through him. And so the tower waited with him, listening, breathing. For in Orthanc that night, a vow was sealed not with trumpets, nor with witnesses, but with silence. A silence that promised majesty. A silence that whispered of ruin. Morning broke like a blade drawn across the horizon, sharp, cold, unrelenting. The sun climbed, but its light never touched the heart of Orthanc. Shadows clung to the tower as if reluctant to surrender. Saruman stood again at the high window, robes falling still around him, his mind already racing. Far to the south, riders gathered. To the east, war brewed like a storm on distant seas. He saw them all as if through a vast chessboard, every square a province, every pawn a people. And above them all, unseen by most, the hand of the Dark One pressed closer. A knock, firm, deliberate. He did not turn. Enter. The door opened, wood groaning against iron hinges. Gandalf stepped inside, gray robes trailing, staff tapping the stone with each step. His presence was different than Saruman's, less commanding, but heavier in another way. He carried silence with him, not the silence of domination, but of listening. "You did not come down to the council," Gandalf said. His voice was gentle, but no less edged for it. Saruman allowed himself a thin smile. The council repeats itself, year upon year. They debate while the world grows restless. Why waste my time with their hesitation? Gandalf approached the table, running a hand across a scroll half unrolled. Because hesitation guards wisdom. Not every fire must be fed the moment it sparks. The words stung more than Saruman would ever show. "And what would you propose, Gandalf? That we sit idle while shadows lengthen? That we smoke and laugh as hobbits do, until the night swallows us whole?" A silence settled between them, not empty, but taut. Gandalf's eyes searched Saruman's, not with suspicion, but with sorrow. He saw something shifting there, something proud, something breaking. "Knowledge is not the same as mastery," Gandalf said softly. "And mastery is not the same as wisdom." Saruman turned away, his hand brushing against the palantir. The glow dimmed at his touch, as though hiding its fire. "Words," he muttered. "Words woven by a dreamer who fears to act." The staff clicked again as Gandalf moved to the door. Before leaving, he paused. "Dreams shape the world as much as hammers. Do not forget that." When the door closed, Saruman exhaled sharply. His fingers pressed the cold stone of the sill, knuckles whitening. Gandalf's presence lingered like the aftertaste of smoke, subtle, bitter, difficult to expel. Below, the pits roared alive as morning labor began. He watched as trees were dragged by chains, their crowns splintering, their roots torn from soil that had embraced them for centuries. Sparks leapt from forges, rising in little storms that vanished in the choking air. And yet, he felt pride. Not in the destruction, but in the design. Where others saw ruin, he saw transformation. The chaotic wilderness was being bent, shaped, ordered. This was progress. This was strength. But deep within, a quieter voice whispered, "At what cost?" He silenced it. Progress always bore cost. Was that not the truth of all creation? Was that not why the Vala themselves had fought Morgoth, to impose harmony upon chaos? The tower seemed to answer his thought. Its slow throb quickened. Iron chimed, deep as a drumbeat. The tower did not question him. It obeyed. That evening, when the last embers of daylight bled into the west, Saruman descended to the pits. Workers scattered at his approach, heads bowed, tools clutched as if afraid to be caught idle. The fires painted his robes in red and gold, making the white seem almost aflame. He paused at the edge of a vast trench where molten metal poured like a river. Sparks hissed against stone. The heat pressed against his face, but he did not flinch. He looked down, not with disgust, but with calculation. "Flesh is fragile," he said, though no one dared answer. "Stone crumbles, wood rots. But steel endures. With steel, a man can shape the world." He raised his voice then, not in command but in proclamation, as though he spoke to the mountains themselves. "The age of weakness is ending. The age of will begins." No one cheered. The workers bent lower, hiding their fear. Only the tower answered, its heartbeat echoing through the earth. Saruman turned away, but in the furnace light his eyes caught the reflection of his own face on the molten surface. For a flicker of an instant, he did not recognize it. The man staring back was harsher, older, hollowed by something unnamed. He blinked, and the image vanished. Above the smoke, the night deepened. Stars flickered faintly as though shivering at the sight of the fires below. Saruman raised his hand toward them, not in prayer, but in challenge. And Orthanc breathed with him, steady and patient, waiting for the moment when vow would become deed. The storm did not arrive with thunder. It crept in silence, like a shadow folding over light. By the time Saruman felt its weight, he was already standing in the eye of it. Gandalf had returned. Not with laughter this time, nor with counsels softened by patience. He came with urgency, his staff ringing sharp against the stones as he ascended the spiraling steps of Orthanc. His face bore no hesitation. His eyes carried fire. When he entered the high chamber, Saruman was waiting, seated beside the glowing sphere. The air smelled faintly of smoke and cold iron. "You have looked too far," Gandalf said at once. No greeting, no pleasantry. The words cut. "The Palantir is not yours to master. It bends. It deceives. It enslaves." Saruman did not rise. "It reveals. It shows truth where others are blind. Must we crawl like worms while shadows gather armies at our gates? Knowledge is power, Gandalf. You above all should honor that." Gandalf strode closer, staff gripped tight. "Not all knowledge is given to heal. Some is poison dressed as wisdom. You are being used." The word used struck Saruman like a blow. His voice thundered back, echoing in the chamber. "I am no puppet. I am the hand that shapes. While you wander with pipe smoke and riddles, I see the world as it is. I alone can bend it." The tower vibrated, stone groaning as if it too bore witness. The Palantir flared, red deepening within its heart, casting both wizards' faces in bloodlight. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence felt like a bowstring drawn to breaking. Then Gandalf's voice softened, almost pleading. "Saruman, my friend, you are not lost yet. Leave this path. The free people still trust you. Stand with us. Stand with me." The words hung between them. Saruman's breath caught, only for an instant, but it was enough to betray the fracture inside him. Somewhere buried deep, the memory stirred, the warmth of council fires, the trust in Gandalf's eyes, the laughter of days long past. But another voice, colder, surged up to drown it. "If you turn now, you return to waiting, to compromise, to weakness. If you stand with him, you remain a servant, not a master." The decision struck like a hammer. Saruman rose, his robes whispering like storm clouds unfurling. His face hardened into marble. "Your path is too small, Mithrandir. You cling to a crumbling age, patching holes with dreams. I will build a new order, stronger, enduring. And if you cannot walk beside me," his hand lifted, "then you will kneel beneath me." Before Gandalf could react, the floor shuddered. Iron doors slammed below, locking with a scream of metal. From the depths of Orthanc came the clatter of chains, the hiss of unseen mechanisms springing to life. The tower itself moved as if obeying its master. Gandalf turned, realizing too late. Saruman's voice cut through the chamber. "You will not leave." Invisible force pressed down, a storm of will clashing against will. Gandalf staggered, staff raised, his gray robes flaring in the windless room. Sparks leapt from the stone as the two powers collided, white against gray, pride against restraint. For a heartbeat, it seemed Gandalf might break free. His eyes blazed, his staff shone with defiance. But Orthanc was Saruman's throne, and the tower lent its strength to its master. With a final surge, Gandalf was driven to his knees, his staff clattering against the floor. Chains of air, unseen yet unyielding, closed around him. Saruman looked down upon him, chest heaving, eyes cold. "You were offered the chance to share in my vision. You chose to oppose it. So now you will watch as I rise, and you will understand too late." Gandalf lifted his head, hair falling across his face, and for all his defeat, his voice carried quiet certainty. "You will fall, Saruman. Not by my hand, nor by Sauron's, but by your own pride." The words landed like prophecy. For the first time, Saruman's face flickered, as if the truth had brushed against him. But pride sealed the crack. He turned away, gesturing, and the chamber darkened until only the red glow of the Palantir remained. Gandalf was dragged below, locked in the heights of Orthanc's pinnacle, prisoner of the very tower that had once sheltered them both. Saruman returned to the sphere, standing over it like a king over a crown. His reflection burned in its depths, distorted, doubled, yet unmistakable. The silence of the tower pressed close. It was no longer the silence of patience. It was the silence of inevitability. Saruman placed both hands on the sphere and whispered, "So be it." And for the first time, the voice that answered was not only his own. The forges of Isengard never slept. Day and night, hammers screamed against iron, fires roared, and the ground trembled with the march of countless feet. Smoke veiled the stars. The air tasted of ash. What once was a green valley had become a pit of industry, where rivers boiled black and roots cracked beneath wheels. At the heart of it all, Saruman stood upon a balcony carved into Orthanc's obsidian flank. Below him stretched the legions he had fashioned, ranks of armored Uruk-hai, their eyes burning like coals in the dark, their bodies bred not for rest, but for conquest. They stood in silence, waiting, an army of shadows awaiting the word of their master. The sight should have filled him with triumph. And yet, a hollow nod at the edges of his mind. He remembered Gandalf's words, spoken in chains, "You will fall by your own pride." The echo lingered, uninvited, like smoke that clings no matter how fiercely the wind blows. Saruman pressed his palms to the stone railing, fingers curling until his knuckles whitened. "They will see," he muttered. "The weak, the dreamers, the doubters, they will see what will conforge." But the tower did not answer as it once had. Its breathing was different now, louder, more restless, as though the stone itself trembled with unease. A servant approached, helm under arm, head bowed. "My lord, the armies are ready. The scouts report that Rohan stirs. The horse lords gather." Saruman's gaze cut to him, sharp as a blade. "Let them gather. They are reeds against a storm. They will bend and break." The servant hesitated. "And the trees, my lord." Strange stirrings in the forest. "The watchers say the woods move." Saruman's eyes narrowed. For an instant, a flicker of doubt crossed his face. The forests, silent, brooding, had been thinning under his command, their trunks split, their branches burned. Could it be that even trees remembered? He banished the thought. Superstition. The forests are dead things. Timber and fuel. Nothing more. The servant bowed and withdrew, leaving Saruman once again to the hollow silence. He turned back to his armies. The Uruk-hai stood like statues, but their silence was not the silence of thought. It was emptiness, obedience, hunger. They did not sing, they did not dream, they did not question. They were tools, and in their eyes he saw no reflection of himself, only the void. For a moment, Saruman felt the ache of loneliness pierce through the grandeur. What was majesty if it was not recognized? What was triumph if no voice rose to share it? The memory came again, unbidden, Gandalf's laughter, bright and human. Saruman clenched his teeth until the memory shattered. "No," he whispered. "This is the better way. The only way." He turned and descended into the great hall of Orthanc. There, maps sprawled across vast tables, rivers and mountains marked in ink, villages circled like prey. Metal beasts half-formed stood in corners, wheels and gears clicking under the hands of weary smiths. A whisper followed him, though no lips moved. The Palantir's voice seeped into his mind, not as sound but as weight. "Strike now. The world is weak. Bend it. Rule it." He resisted the shiver. "Not rule. Guide," he told himself aloud, as though speaking the word could make it true. But even he heard the lie. The chamber doors opened suddenly. Grima Wormtongue, pale and trembling, crept forward. His eyes darted like a rat's, yet his smile was obsequious. "My lord, the king of Rohan falters. His court bends beneath my whispers. He is ripe for the plucking." Saruman studied him, this frail man who had sold his tongue for favor. Was this his ally? Was this the shape of loyalty he inspired? He forced approval into his tone. "Good. Keep the king blind, keep his sword sheathed. When the storm breaks, he will not lift it in time." Wormtongue bowed low, though his eyes glittered with something unreadable. When he was gone, Saruman sank into the great black throne at the center of the hall. The stone was cold, hard, unyielding. His body ached with the weight of it. Around him, The machines churned, the maps waited, the armies stood restless. And still, in the silence between hammer strikes, he heard the whisper, "You are not master. You are pawn." His hands gripped the armrests until they shook. "No. I chose this path. I hold the reins." But the palantir glowed faintly on its pedestal, red light pulsing like a heartbeat. Its glow reached across the chamber, painting Saruman's white robes in the color of blood. Outside, the night thickened. The winds rose. The forest stirred. The storm gathered. Saruman closed his eyes, forcing himself to breathe with the tower. Yet for the first time, Orthanc's breath did not calm him. It pressed heavy, suffocating, as if the tower itself were waiting not for triumph, but for judgment. And in that heavy silence, Saruman felt something he had not felt in years. Fear. The night did not fall gently. It tore down like a curtain ripped from its hooks, thunder rolling, winds shrieking through the valley. Yet it was not storm alone that rose against Isengard. From the forests, shapes stirred, vast, gnarled, walking with the weight of centuries. Eyes like embers glowed beneath branches, roots became legs, trunks bent into arms. The Ents had come. Saruman first heard them as a tremor in the stone beneath his feet. At first, he mistook it for the rhythm of his army's drilling, but then came the creak of wood, the groan of forests walking, the thunder of ancient roots tearing free. When he stepped to his balcony, his vision filled with a sight he had mocked only days before, trees marching, slow but unstoppable, their shadows taller than towers. The Uruk-hai roared below, weapons raised, arrows loosed. Fire pots cracked against bark. Yet the Ents did not falter. They swept through the ranks like mountains in motion, crushing, tearing, scattering. Saruman's voice rose above the chaos, resonant and commanding. "Stand. Burn them. The forest cannot defy steel." But even as he spoke, a great Ent waded into the forges, its limbs aflame, and with a groan like the breaking of worlds it toppled the furnaces. Fire met water, and a white hiss exploded into the sky. The pits boiled, choking the air with steam and ash. The tower shook. For the first time, Orthanc's steady breathing was ragged, uneven. Saruman gripped the railing, fury and disbelief warring in his chest. "No," he whispered, as though denial could halt the flood. "This is my design. This is order. This is power." But below, chaos reigned. His army broke against the living wood. Machines shattered, walls crumbled. Water, loosed by broken dams, surged through the valley, drowning the fires, swallowing the furnaces. The forges that once sang with progress now screamed in ruin. And through it all, the Ents advanced, their voices a chorus of grief and wrath, the mourning of slaughtered trees, the vengeance of roots torn from soil. Saruman staggered back from the balcony, the heat of steam and smoke filling his lungs. He turned to the palantir, its red glow steady, unshaken, almost mocking. "You promised me victory," he hissed. "You showed me order, dominion. Was this your truth?" The sphere pulsed, shadows swirling within its depths. A voice not heard, but felt pressed against his mind. "You were the one who chose. You were the one who bent." Saruman's hands trembled. For the first time, he felt the weight of chains not around his wrists, but around his will. He had not mastered the palantir. He had been mastered by it. A roar from outside pulled him back. He rushed once more to the balcony. Orthanc alone still stood, black and unyielding, its stone impervious to fire and flood. But all around, Isengard was gone, reduced to broken timbers, drowned forges, shattered armies. And there, at the tower's base, stood Gandalf. Freed from chains, white robes gleaming even through the storm of ash. His staff was raised, but his eyes were fixed not on the Ents, nor the ruins, but on Saruman himself. Their gazes locked across the gulf. In that instant, Saruman's voice broke loose in a cry, half rage, half despair. "This is mine. All of it. You will not take it from me." But the words rang hollow, swallowed by the roar of water and the groan of breaking earth. The Ents did not look up. They did not need to. The tower that had breathed with him now stood silent, a black tomb of pride. Saruman fell to his knees. For the first time, the marble mask cracked, and the man beneath showed, weary, terrified, alone. Gandalf's voice carried across the ruin, strong yet sorrowful. "Your power is ended, Saruman. Not by my hand, not by force, but by the very world you sought to bend. It remembers what you tried to erase." The words struck harder than any blade. Saruman's breath came shallow. He reached for the palantir one last time, clinging to it as though it were lifeblood. Its glow flared, then dimmed. It no longer bent toward him. It no longer needed him. And in that moment, Saruman understood. He had not risen to mastery. He had only fallen into servitude. The tower stood, indestructible, but everything else lay in ruin. And in the silence after the flood, Saruman felt the one truth he had fled from all along. He was powerless, silence. For the first time in memory, Orthanc knew silence. No hammers clanged. No furnaces roared. No armies marched. Only the drip of water sliding down black stone, the hiss of steam fading into the night. Saruman sat alone in the high chamber, the palantir dark at his side. His once white robes were stained with ash, his hands raw from gripping the railing until the stone cut skin. The tower had survived, but it felt less like a fortress now and more like a prison. He had always told himself he was master here, that Orthanc breathed because of him, that its voice echoed his will. But now, the tower did not breathe. It waited. Still, heavy, implacable. Below, the Ents ringed the ruin, standing like living monuments of judgment. They did not speak. They did not look up. They had delivered their verdict and now let silence bear it out. Saruman's gaze drifted to the horizon, where dawn bled faint gold into the wreckage. Light caught the water that now drowned his forges, glinting as though mocking him. His hand twitched, reaching for the palantir, but he stopped. What would it show him now? Chains? Shadows? The face of the master he had claimed to resist, but in truth had served? His thoughts turned unwillingly to Gandalf. He saw him again in memory, gray robes swirling, laughter bright as firelight, staff striking the ground with quiet conviction. How many times had Saruman dismissed him as a dreamer, as a fool content with small joys? And yet it was Gandalf who had stood unbroken, who had risen while Saruman had sunk. The ache of recognition was worse than defeat. It was not Sauron who had undone him. It was not Gandalf. It was himself. Pride had hollowed him, step by step, until nothing remained but an echo of majesty. He whispered into the empty chamber, his voice rasping. I was the White, the greatest of us. And now, his hand trembled as he held it up before his eyes, seeing not power, not command, but frailty. Now I am nothing. The word clung to the walls, fading slowly as though reluctant to die. Nothing. Yet somewhere deeper, a sliver of defiance stirred. He straightened, though pain shot through his spine. No, he muttered, more to himself than to the silent stones. They will not cast me aside. I will rebuild. I will. His voice broke. Even he did not believe it. The palantir remained dark, its surface dull. No glow answered him, no whisper filled his mind. The silence mocked his words more than any voice could. Outside, the Ents shifted, their heavy forms swaying in the morning breeze. Water continued to lap against the broken pits. A bird, bold or careless, alighted on the balcony rail, cocking its head at the ruined lord within. It sang once, a clear, fragile note, and then flew away. Saruman's shoulders sagged. That small sound pierced him more deeply than the roar of war. It reminded him of what he had despised, what he had abandoned, simplicity, unmeasured joys, the world as it was before he sought to master it. For a long while, he said nothing. He sat, hunched in the high chamber, the silence pressing against him until it felt like stone upon his chest. At last, he spoke again, barely above a whisper. Orthanc, breathe for me. But the tower remained still. No heartbeat. No voice. No reply. Saruman closed his eyes, and in that darkness, he saw not armies, not dominion, but the small hall of council long ago, firelight, laughter, the faces of those who had once called him brother. The memory flickered, faint and fading, like embers at the edge of ash. When dawn finally broke across the valley, it touched Orthanc but did not warm it. The tower stood black and unyielding, a monument not to trust. The world moved on without him.